Okay, greetings, friends around the world. I'm about to do something that I don't want to do. I am going to finger a couple of individuals on Twitter because I'm suspicious of them. Now, I'm simply sharing my concern. I'm not motivated to impugn or smear or discredit an innocent person. I'm only expressing my concern. And it has to do with the origin of Spygate. What happened that resulted in Spygate and the crazy collusion accusations aimed at Donald Trump? How did Spygate get started? What's the basis of it? What happened first? And I believe simply because I happened to read Bill Browder's book entitled Red Notice, that perhaps I was inadvertently equipped with some relevant information that other people don't have. So I have a different perspective. I happen to trust Bill Browder. I believe that he legitimately made a lot of money in Russia by buying up cheap shares of stocks that when the Russian government decided to privatize these formerly state-run, state-owned enterprises, Browder was among the very first to see the potential. That he could see that these shares of stock were very under priced and could be bought for pennies and later could be sold for tens and twenties of dollars. And so he bought what he could. He didn't have a whole lot of money, so he went around and explained his idea to various people that had a lot of money and encouraged them to participate when these Russian enterprises were privatized. Say, roughly 20 years ago. I don't remember the exact date. This was probably started by Yeltsin, Boris Yeltsin. Okay, I believe that Browder legitimately made money, and his investors and his money management fund, Hermitage, um, anyway, Hermitage something, I forget, an investment fund, made a lot of money. And at some point, I believe that Vladimir Putin and his cronies, these former KGB officers turned so-called oligarchs, began to do the same thing and were greedy and decided to take a chunk of Browder's money. That's what that's my interpretation. So they put him on the Interpol list to be arrested whenever he was passing through airports, uh, traveling back and forth between Britain and Russia. And they've been attacking him, and they try to take a big chunk of his money. Uh, but after they took over his business in Russia, the, the whatever money and assets were still in Russia, they simply took over, gained possession of it illegitimately. Um, and to show you a minute detail of this that proves their complicity, uh, after gaining possession and control of Browder's business in Russia, um, they applied for a tax refund on earnings that Browder had made, taxes that Browder had paid. They applied for a refund, and using corruption in the Russian government, were given the refund back, millions of dollars refunded illegitimately, illegally. Browder, of course, is totally innocent because he paid the taxes on the profits. They took over his business and applied for a refund and took the money. And various activities like this is what these so-called Russian oligarchs did. Browder, and in the course of this happening, they murdered Browder's associate named Magnitsky. They murdered his associate, his tax advisor, accountant, who probably worked for an accounting firm called Duncan Firestone, to give you some more relevant details. I believe that Browder's account in his book is basically correct. For the most part, you know, barring human errors or oversights, but it's not a pack of lies. I believe Browder in his book entitled Red Notice, which is what the Interpol International Police Force issues at customs and immigration entry points, border crossings, telling the guard there, the policeman there, to pick you up and detain you for questioning. And if you're picked up and sent to Russia, I suspect that you might be in a world of hurt. And you might end up like Magnitsky, murdered in prison. Good, because I suspect, based on what little I know, that the Russian government is totally corrupt, vicious, um, murderous, deadly, and that Browder knows that they've murdered several people associated with him in this case. It's the Russian KGB all over again, but even worse. And so Browder, in an effort to get justice for his former associate named Magnitsky, who was murdered in prison over allegations of tax fraud that didn't happen, he approached his people that he knew in the U.S. Congress to and asked them to enact a program of sanctions on these Russians, in which they did. The U.S. Congress uh, passed into law the Magnitsky Act, putting sanctions on Russians whereby they cannot enter the United States, they cannot move their money out of the United States, they cannot get hold of their assets in the United States. And then Browder went to Europe and persuaded the Europeans to do the same thing. So there's a whole lot of people that take Browder seriously. I happen to be one of them. So when I see people on Twitter, for example, who are subtly uh, carrying out a smear campaign, an effort to discredit Bill Browder, I am naturally suspicious. And I noticed two uh, influential entities on Twitter. On Twitter, you don't really know who you're dealing with because a lot of people have a phony name, and you have to check out what they're saying to see if you have confidence in what they're saying. And in the case of these two Twitter accounts that I'm about to point out to you, um, you will notice, well, they're very popular. They appear to have great credibility, and I hate to do this, and I hope I'm wrong. But these two Twitter accounts, very popular, cited by other people who are very interested in understanding the origin of Spygate. These people are held in high esteem, but I'm suspicious of both of them because they're out to smear Browder, whom I trust. That's all. That's the basis of everything. I don't have any other information other than that. I've noticed two prominent Twitter accounts that both are trying to smear Browder. Neither of these individuals can give me any reason to have a negative attitude toward Bill Browder at all whatsoever. None of them can give me any valid reason to be down on Bill Browder. So it leads me to suspect that perhaps the origin of Spygate is connected to the enactment of the Magnitsky Act, which places sanctions on Russian oligarchs. And the two Twitter accounts, and I hope I'm wrong. I'm going to just simply alert you to it so you can watch and find out. You can pay attention. I'm simply sharing my concerns. The two Twitter accounts are Roscoe P. Davis and Jeff Carlson, which goes by the name Jeff at the Markets Work. And I hate to do this, and I hope I'm wrong. But both of these people are smearing Bill Browder, whom I trust, It makes me suspicious that they're in concert with these Russian oligarchs, uh, doing an information campaign, disinformation influence campaign, which is what the Russians are noted for. That's their expertise, spreading lies that are very carefully tucked into a mass of truth. The way a disinformation campaign works so effectively is you add a little bit of error into a collection of facts, especially facts that are very impressive and credible. You just make a little change here and there. That's my point. I want to alert you to these two Twitter accounts, and I want to also suggest that perhaps Bill Browder and the sanctions enacted against these Russian oligarchs um, is at the heart and at the beginning of so-called Spygate, which triggered the Russia collusion hoax effort to discredit and prevent from winning the presidential election. Just sharing my thoughts. Thanks for listening.